Hello and welcome to the Four Pillars of Managing Your Blended Team. I'm Leanne Cordisco with Madison College. I am happy to be with you here today to discuss the remote work environment. And what we're going to do in this session is learn what the industry experts are saying about blended teams and identify pain points within blended teams and how to rebuild trust, communication, and culture within teams. Now, according to Microsoft's Work Trend Index report released summer 2021, right now 40% of the global workforce is looking to change jobs. So I'm asking you, how well do you know your team? And 73% of the global workforce wants flexible workplaces, flexible options to stay. So you should be thinking about including those in your office environment. The report also said that in 2019, 70% of employees said they wanted to stay for an additional 2 years on their job. So in just 18 months, COVID has caused a 10% increase in the numbers of people actively looking to leave their jobs. The reasons why are beyond the scope of what we're going to cover today, but if you didn't know that almost half of your workforce is looking to leave, this might be a shock to the system. So how you manage and keep your employees happy can certainly affect your team in the next 12 months. So what Microsoft says are the 7 trends that are shaping hybrid work are, number 1, talent is everywhere in this hybrid world. That great news, you can now have your pick of the best and the brightest, but bad news, everybody else has access to the best and the brightest. And remember that 40% of your people are thinking about leaving now. So you're at risk of perhaps losing some of your best people. Number 2, the flexible workplace is here to stay, due in part to remote work technology like Teams and Zoom, so much more so than in 2019. The expectation is that people can work from everywhere. So remote work isn't a perk anymore, it's the new baseline. Number 3, leaders are a little bit out of touch with their employees and need a wake-up call. Microsoft says that leaders who are more likely to be older and have more longevity in the company feel like they are faring well or thriving in the company in this remote work environment. In some cases, this remote work environment has given them a better work-life balance. Compare that to newer employees who say they're struggling with issues like connections and culture. So the tenured employees feel a little safer in this, and the newer employees feel a little more vulnerable in this environment. Number 4, high productivity is masking an exhausted workforce. The survey says that remote workers often put in 10 to 12% more hours per week than the in-office workers, and this is basically affecting the younger generation more than the older generation, and that's issue number 5. Gen Z is at risk and needs to be re-energized because they're burning out. Hybrid workers, or hybrid environment remote workers, see shrinking networks, and that's causing some reduction in innovation, where office workers can get together and bounce ideas off of each other and come up with new ideas. Remote workers don't have that same opportunity, and that's what's endangering innovation. And lastly, Microsoft says that authenticity will spur productivity and promote well-being. So being your best, most honest self naturally leads to a higher sense of productivity. So that means that managing hybrid teams is different. And the question is, how do you lead now? We are saying that there are 4 pillars of a blended team, 4 pillars of success: trust, communication, culture, and performance management. Let's take a look at each of them in a little more detail. The Harvard Business Review from June 2020 looked closely at trust in hybrid teams, and their conclusion is that you build trust by sharing accurate, timely, and transparent information. Acknowledging team achievements and building on team wins also builds trust. Number two, Harvard says that leaders and managers have some work to do, that they should be taking some training on dealing with ambiguity, building personal resilience, uh, developing emotional intelligence, and leading hybrid teams. Harvard says, number three, make employees' well-being your top priority. Make them feel safe. Whether it's implementing public safety protocols or providing access to well-being offerings, employees develop trust when they feel that their employer has their back. And that includes number four, managing the fear factor. The virus, job stability. There's some things that are really unsettling in today's environment. The fear of missing out, declining mental health status. These are all elements that can be somewhat mitigated by over communicating, by being very transparent, by making the employee feel safe and well cared for. Managing this fear is basically managing company pain points. And good leaders will always be evaluating their team for their performance. And good leaders also know that small tweaks up front can prevent major adjustments later on. So one way to look for these pain points is to keep an eye on parity. Parity is how we make things fair for everyone. So where is the parity when it comes to trust? It's usually around perceived injustices. That's where hybrid teams break down. Here are a couple of examples for the trust pillar. An office worker sees colleagues from other departments on a regular basis, but the remote worker is siloed. What can be done to equalize that? How can you find parity? The remote worker does personal errands during normal working hours. The office worker must take time off for the same thing. What can be done to equalize that? The idea is to make all parts of the team equally valuable. The second pillar is communication. And here our expert is Sean Belling, the CIO of Madison College. He's written a book called Remotely Possible Best Practices for Remote Work. It came out this summer, June 2021. And Sean says that communication begins with the home office or the traditional office and making sure that both are set up for success. So to communicate clearly from the home office, Sean says the technology must work on day one, and there has to be support for the technology if something goes wrong. Sean also recommends standardizing on hardware and software to make usage easier and to make troubleshooting easier if something goes wrong. Now consider the physical office. How will people use the space in this new hybrid environment? Will they go into the office to work alone, or will they go in to collaborate? Here are some questions to consider. What kind of space do you need for people and teams to be most productive? How many staff do you anticipate in the office? More than 2 days a week. All of this can cause a change in the square footage of the office space that you need, saving you some capital perhaps, and allowing you to perhaps invest in your remote workers. Do you have a culture that embraces or rejects shared desks or hoteling models for office space? How can you reserve office space in a hoteling model if you need to go on site and do some work? And does it make sense to build out flexible, configurable spaces to accommodate scenarios that you haven't seen yet, to accommodate large meetings, to accommodate small breakout meetings? So as you're using your space differently, you'll have to reconsider your space needs. So once you understand your home and your office environments, Sean says that meetings, having some kind of structure around your communication is absolutely vital. And the workhorse of the working world is the team meeting. So Sean says we should assume that all team meetings should be remote for all members. If two people of a team are in a conference room or a meeting room while the others are remote, that creates a sense of other, that there's somebody together and I'm apart. So the idea is that everyone communicates in that team meeting from the same standpoint, all remote or all together. Sean also recommends planning meetings with things like written agendas in a standard format and somebody keeping records or scribing what's done to make sure that transparency in communication is available for everyone. And establish a process and a structure around meetings so that people know where they can get information, when they need to present information, and what kind of format it needs to be in if they are going to be presenting. Now, if the team meeting is the workhorse of the corporate world, the one-on-one meeting is the rock star of employee communication. And this is where the manager can really assess the needs of the employee and offer support. Here's where the manager should be using some of those Harvard recommendations for emotional intelligence and nonverbal communication to catch signs of stress or burnout or elevated anxiety in early stages. Sean says that planning social time is important. So does the software company GitLab. They say that you have to be intentional when it comes to social time. Plan for it and stick to the plan. The time is crucial for remote employees to feel like they're a part of the team and where they can get a sense of the company's culture. One very interesting GitLab idea is the $150 visiting grant, where remote employees can travel to another site to collaborate with another remote employee or get to the home office. In addition to that, they offer ideas that are a little more common, like coffee meetings or silly hat days or pet days, or sharing information on some kind of online portal like Padlets. There's loads of different ways out there that people can communicate in a social, human way without going into goals and objectives of specific projects. So when it comes to communication, the parity, consider these questions. The remote office worker gets their internet paid for by the company. What's fair for the office worker? Or the office worker gets more face time with the manager. What's fair for the remote worker? We don't have answers for these questions today, but what we're trying to do is get you to think about all these different perceived injustices, perceived pain points, and then think of ways that you can work through them and manage through them. So our third pillar is culture. And culture, according to Trello.com, another software company, they've got 5 core elements to building a great culture. And the first one is empathy is everything. And this is especially true when it comes to things like electronic communications, texts, chats, and emails, where you don't have the benefit of nonverbal communication. A lot can get lost. Tone and nuance can get lost. So you always want to assume positive intent in these nonverbal communications. Walk in the other person's shoes and presume the best of their message. You've probably heard the truism that communication is 40% verbal and the rest is nonverbal. That is certainly at play here. Just give people the benefit of the doubt. The second guide for Trello is transparency, and we've talked about this before. Information must be accessible to everyone across the team in the same place so that we're not building what feels like secrets or what could be invisible walls. Trello also believes that corporate culture means to build a corporate culture, you have to build a structure around it, including meetings and including events where everybody can get together and including social time. Set up a calendar for this, set a cadence for the work. And if the stand-up meetings are once a week and the one-on-one meetings are once a week, consider having some kind of annual get-together for the employees where the whole team gets together. Annual is great. More frequently is even better if you have that in your budget. Trello also says they pay attention to different and equal, and this is around diversity and inclusion. The idea that everyone brings their best self to work and they're respected for their talents and abilities builds a corporate culture of trust. And lastly, Trello says don't leave culture to chance, that managers have to be the ones driving the culture, especially for new hires. Trello also acknowledges that building and maintaining good culture in a hybrid environment is really difficult. You have to work at it. And Trello references a study done by the Gartner Consulting Group in 2021 that said that culture is improved for long-term employees who can now work from home, but culture isn't felt at all for new employees in hybrid environments. So keep that idea top of mind because managers should be using their one-on-one time with their employees to role model good behaviors, including that culture that you want them to see. One additional thought here. Gardner, one additional thought here. Think back to the beginning of the presentation when we said that Gen Z is at risk. Gartner is saying that new employees don't feel the culture. We're making a connection that those newer employees are younger employees, and that's where this generation is tending to burn out a bit. So where's the parity around culture? Here's some points to consider. A remote office worker wears relaxed clothing, but the office worker is restricted to business attire, so two very different standards. Or the office workers eat lunch together or perhaps play sports together afterwards. And where's the parity for the remote worker? Definitely want to be keeping these issues in mind so that there's parity amongst the team. Our fourth pillar is onboarding, our fourth pillar is performance management, which begins with onboarding. And Sean Belling, again from Madison College, says setting expectations from day one is a best practice, and that means onboarding. Let the employee know upfront what's expected from them. Make sure that technology works and that access is granted to all appropriate drives and applications. Make sure to have on-demand training available for the employee. A best practice is to pair up a new employee with a buddy or a mentor and make time in their schedules for activities to occur like coffee chats, lunch and learns, and video calls with other departments or stakeholders. Please keep in mind that this kind of onboarding takes a longer amount of time because remote workers can't bump into people in the hallway and start conversations, or they can't just walk across to a coworker's desk and ask a question. Another important thing to consider for onboarding is swag and gear. Remote workers wearing a branded hat or a shirt automatically can feel like they're a part of the team just because of wearing the logoed clothing. And who doesn't love getting a little bit of swag? Now, we all know that project management is an ongoing check-in and review process, and here's where the one-on-one is useful in that review. It's a place to model culture. It's a place to get to know the employee. It's a place to really drill down on the goals and the project milestones to make sure the work is getting done, but still have that communication with somebody. And lastly, Sean is saying that we can no longer be measuring butts in seats as what a good worker should be doing. We should be measuring project milestones rather than how much time people spend at their desk. Somebody can do a task in 20 hours, and it could take a different person 25 hours to achieve the same task. So we should be basing merit on performance of objective goals and measures. So where's the parity here? An office worker is expected in the office from 8 to 4, but another person with the same job works remotely. How can you handle the remote worker coming in late? Should you handle that, or should you perhaps change your policy? How are jobs assigned? Is it skill or is it proximity? There are always those go-to people in the office who seem to get the lion's work of extra tasks, or the lion's share of extra tasks. So think about that from a parity perspective. How do you make sure that you are judging your in-office employees and your remote employees fairly? In addition to the four styles, the four pillars of hybrid management, I'd like to discuss management styles for a moment. The first being authoritarian. Now, this management style really doesn't work well for a hybrid team. It's because the command and control nature of the authoritarian style doesn't really have room for input or delegation. Decisions are made from the top down, and this style of management is great for crisis management, but it really doesn't do well to get team buy-in or to build cohesive teams. The second style that doesn't work very well is the bureaucratic style of management, and that's because there are layers and layers of control in this. The management style works well for highly regulated business environments, but it doesn't work well for remote teams due to the individualized nature of work. Now, when you consider laissez-faire, you might think that this would be a great style for remote management, but as a matter of fact, it's exactly opposite that. The hands-off nature of laissez-faire management doesn't build teams or interactions at all, and it certainly makes the remote employee feel isolated and siloed. This style works great if you've got an experienced team of subject matter experts, but doesn't do well to actually build any kind of team bonding. Then we come to the democratic style, and this actually works really well because the democratic style of management is inclusive and cooperative. It seeks input and feedback from the team so that the team feels ownership of the goals or objectives of the project, and the team moves forward together. And lastly, the servant leadership management model is personally my favorite. And my vision of this is an upside down triangle with the manager at the bottom point of the triangle and the team on the flat top of the triangle. And the manager does all the planning in advance, creates the structure, sets up the communication, secures and provides the resources for the team, and then provides assistance for the team when they need it. The manager is there to help the employee succeed. What also makes servant leadership such a good choice is its greater sense of purpose and caring and well-being. As we've seen earlier, empathy for remote employees goes a long way to making them feel a part of the team. It's a difficult thing to do, but it's totally worthwhile, and servant leadership is a great way to make that happen. So our second bonus today is thinking about 2021 as a rebuilding year. And to use a sports analogy, after a college team has won 3 national championships in a row and lost all of their seniors, and then have a rebuilding year where the team is coming back. That's what this could be in your organization. It's time for you to restructure your policies and procedures to support a hybrid team. And specific examples of that could be how you handle vacation time. Some organizations are moving to a model of not accounting for vacation time and rather saying, if you get your work objectives done, take your vacation time, however much you wish. And it's on the honor system that as long as the work gets done, the vacation is okay. Now is the time to be doing some investment in diversity and inclusion training to make sure that you're allowing all of your team to bring its most authentic self to the table to get work done. And you should be thinking about technology stipends. How do you make it fair for people who are using their internet service from home to get their work done? In addition to restructuring your policies and procedures, think about restructuring your goals, getting rid of things that don't make sense anymore, writing it down and putting together new plans. Restructure your teams to fit that goal, and that certainly includes bringing in remote workers to supplement your in-office staff as you can and making them a valuable part of the team. And lastly, and the hardest part is creating your perfect culture. Now is the time that you can make changes, as difficult as they may be, but in this time of the whole world is pivoting, you can pivot as well and create the culture that you want. So in summary, our 4 pillars for managing remote teams or hybrid teams are trust, communication, culture, and performance management. And how you can use, or skills that you'll need to support those 4 pillars, are to have empathy, to use your one-on-one meetings, to find parity across all of your employees, over communicate and be transparent, and have the technology work correctly from day one. And lastly, be really purposeful in creating your perfect corporate culture. So thank you very much for attending today. Here is a list of the resources that I mentioned throughout the presentation, which you can certainly go out and find. I certainly recommend the Microsoft survey for the Work Trend Index. They've been doing that for a number of years. I've always found it very helpful. Madison College is also a wonderful resource for considering your hybrid team. Our coursework in leadership and professional development can absolutely help you change your team to move into this hybrid environment. I'm Leanne Cordisco. If you'd like more information on any of the Madison College offerings, just reach out to us at madisoncollege.edu/CE, or just go to the Madison College website and our information will be there one click away. Thank you for taking this time to attend this presentation, and I hope you have a wonderful day.